Guys, apologize for the last week. I'm not really having anything except some of those fucking stupid shorts up, which I'm coming around to a little bit actually. I can see their purpose and get my advocacy for no more cat jump scares in movies in. But yeah, I was just having one of those weeks where this channel takes up most of my free time. So like, there's times that I was recording music, I was working on a challenge run in the game I'm playing. So there was just like, it was one of those weeks where it's like, I'm just going to relax and just do whatever the fuck I want. So as much as I love you guys, fuck you for the last week or so. And I'm back now, and we're going way back to 1953 with Invaders from Mars, directed by William Cameron Menzies. And this is a remake. There is a remake on this from 86, I want to say, that Toby Hooper directed and Karen Black stars in. And I think that's why I remembered this premise so much, because my father I was hanging out with the other day, and he's not a big horror fan, but he likes film in general. So we were talking about horror for some reason, and he brought up some movie that used to scare him when he was a kid, and that there was these things like aliens in the ground, and they were coming up and taking people down to the sand pits. And it sounded so familiar to me, and I couldn't think of what the fuck that the movie was. And we ended up Googling it, and I found it. I said, it's Invaders from Mars, 53. And then I started reading the description. He's like, that's it. He's like, we should find that and watch it. I said, all right, well, I'm not going to watch a movie and not take notes and do a video on it. So why the hell not? So Invaders from Mars, 1953. For an old movie, man, for a movie from the early 50s, very highly enjoyable. Like, of course, there's some absolutely ridiculous stuff in here. But for the time period, I thought I had a great time watching this. I thought it was very, very highly enjoyable. And just like I said, like, for the time, you have to put all that out of your head. Like, with the UFO, how it's obviously just like a fucking hologram, like, put on a background. Or like the gun sounds, which you hear in so many of those old movies. Just not even just like a space gun, like a regular gun. Like, it goes off and pew pew, like... It's fucking hysterical, but what are you gonna do? So we have opening narration here with shots of space, which, like I said, for the time, looks pretty cool. We see the husband and wife, George and Mary, that are living, sleeping in two beds, in the two twin beds, which I always gotta laugh at anytime I see any older movie or TV show, like I Love Lucy, all those old shows, how you couldn't be in the same bed if you're a husband and wife, which is hysterical, but funny all the less to see. And then we have the kid David, who sees a UFO coming out of the sky and crashes into these sand pits that are right behind his house. And man, the shots of that fence leading up to the sand pits, every time they show that shot, it looks so cool. Like, something about that shot looks awesome. Like, that could be an iconic shot that I'm not aware of or something, since I'm not huge into like 50s and earlier films. I wouldn't be surprised if that was known as like an iconic shot from a science fiction or old horror movie or anything like that. Because this is the first movie that was, pretty sure that I've read, that's the first movie with aliens and a spacecraft being shown on screen in color, which is a cool little distinction to have. But for the times, awesome stuff. Then the cops go looking for the father, George, because he ends up getting sucked in the sand pit and he ends up disappearing. And when he returns, he's acting like so different from how this father acts. Like, no one in this movie at all realizes there's something wrong with any of these main characters that get taken over by the aliens or whatever. They have like little chips put in the back of their neck that like eventually like end up not working and like exploding and giving the people hemorrhages. Like, when these people who were infected by the aliens, like, return, nobody says, like, yeah, that's not how George acts on a normal day, like, daily basis. Nothing like that. They accept that they are the way that they are, and that's it. But it works for the creepy factor. Then we see this little girl, Kathy, gets also pulled into the sand and taken over by aliens. We have the chief of police gets taken over. Like, these Martians work fucking fast, man. Like, again, I don't know what their whole plan was, since, like, all these chips they're putting in the back of these people's necks seem to just explode and kill them. So it's not like an invasion of the body snatchers type thing, like, where you're trying to take over the planet. Like, that if that was their plan, they didn't think of they didn't think very well about the plan because it just ends up killing everybody. But they end up locking up David, the little kid, because he goes to the cops and ends up saying that his father and mother aren't acting the same way and that they get taken by aliens, and no one believes this, especially like the main chief, who was also taken over. There's a lot of characters in this movie, man. I'm not remembering all of them, especially from like 5 days ago, but there's a lot. There's a hell of a lot of military people. There's a whole bunch of cops and everything, and like half of them are taken over by these aliens. And we meet Dr. Bake, or Pat is his first name, or Pat Bake. Shut up, whatever it is. I'm jumping back into this. If I take a week off, it's going to take a little bit to get back in the mood. To get into the groove, gotta be able to get back into the groove. And then the doctor stops at David's parents because they show up to try to take him home, and they're both infected by the alien thing in their neck. And the doctor ends up saying, no, he's under my care now, so I'll bring him back when I can. So she takes control, and they end up going to this observatory with Dr. Kelston, who's like an astronomer. And I just love hearing like all this, like a 10-minute long scene of exposition of space and different planets, and like just like all the stuff that we didn't know back in the 50s that we know now about outer space and just planets and galaxies and all that stuff. Just hearing how much we were wrong back in the early 50s. It's an interesting scene for sure. Talking about Mars and everything like that. And they're talking about like the UFO types. And there's a picture in the back that looks just like the spaceship that everyone claims to see that they saw in '97, the Phoenix Lights in Arizona. If anyone's into aliens and all that shit like I am, the Phoenix Lights in '97, check them out. It looks just like one of the pictures in the background here. I was like, they knew about that shit coming. Absolutely. And then they deduce that there is life on Mars, but that they can't live above ground. They would have to live under the ground, which is why this spacecraft of Martians seem to be under the ground in the sand pits, taking people down with them. Ooh, I love that telescope in the observatory building when it opens up and this cool ass telescope comes out. Really cool looking telescope. And I like how they refer to the Martians in this as mutants at certain points. Instead of Martians, mutants. I'll take it. And then we have the Pentagon called, and the military gets called in, and there are literally like there has to be 20 minutes in this movie devoted to just tanks driving over the sand to get to wherever the hell this is. There are so many shots of tanks, just one after another, and just like literally for like 15, almost 20 minutes. Like it really pads the runtime a decent bit. But they're cool looking tanks. If you still had a tank like that today, you'd be sitting on some type of money. So. But a lot of tanks is what I'm trying to say. Like, there's so many of them in this movie. And like I said, all the military comes. Like, they all know exactly what's going on, even though that they've never had to deal with this seemingly ever before. And the kid, David, and the doctor, the astronomer, are always right. Like, I said this in some video recently, that everything they guess is exactly what's going on. Like, every theory they come up with, well, maybe that the Martians are doing this because on their planet they can do, yeah, that could be a possibility, David. And like, that's exactly what happens. And like 5 minutes later, well, they could be using some sort of ray gun to like blast through the walls underground. And then we find out that's exactly what's happening there. Like, these people get nothing wrong throughout this whole movie. And before the end, you're thinking like they should give this kid a fucking Medal of Honor. David, like, this kid takes control of everything. This kid's a fucking boy genius. Like, this kid deserves like 5 Purple Hearts by the end of this film. If the ending didn't end the way that it did. But like, this kid just takes control over every situation. It's hilarious throughout the whole movie. And then we find out 2 of the cops that were taken over earlier, and the girl Kathy that got sucked into the sand, they have hemorrhages from the little thing in the back of their neck from the aliens, and they're dead. And Kathy's dad handles her death amazingly. Like, he lets out like one little reaction, like, oh, my Kathy. And then like he's like right back to business and like looking down binoculars at this. He has no reaction at all that his daughter just hemorrhaged and died in the hospital. Like, not one Not one little bit of reaction or emotion or nothing like that. You gotta love it. Then we get to see the cave underneath the sand pits, and they look cool. Like all the ending sets in this movie look pretty damn good. Like all the underground sets, the spaceship itself looks really cool. Cool stuff. And then Dr. Bake and David get pulled down under, and now it's become a rescue mission as well as blowing these Martians to hell. And I don't even know what the fuck that says. Oh, the look of the Martians. I mean, you can tell, obviously, that they're just guys in suits. I mean, I didn't even have to. I don't think I even had to say that that you could tell. But I mean, they look fine. Like just like I said, they're guys in suits. The suits look all right for the 50s, so they look cool. That's it. There's no like greatness or anything to them. But the main alien, he looks pretty cool. He looks kind of creepy. It's just like this like big ass head, like painted silver. Kind of looks like the Tin Man, but like a Martian version of the Tin Man. He looks kind of cool, and like he doesn't say anything. He can like supposedly like telepathically link with people to like talk to them and stuff. That's a cool looking alien. And then we have the military heads underground, and they're going to start putting explosive charges and everything on the spaceship to try to blast these mutant Martians back to Mars in some way. I don't know how that works. And they end up rescuing Dr. Bake right before she's like probed. Like in the 50s, they can't really show a true probe, but she was getting her ass probed, trust me. Then they go to plant the charges. I said that. They have this awesome ray gun in this movie. I don't believe they didn't let him keep it. That David didn't keep the ray gun at the end of this movie is such a big crime. Again, like I said, end of the movie changes all this. But what a cool looking ray gun, man. And the effects don't look half bad. Like, they really don't. You have like the Martians are pointing the ray gun at the caves and stuff to get them to like explode and make new like pathways through the caves and everything like that. Looks really cool. Like, it doesn't look half bad at all. And they actually do let David use it at some point. They just hand this kid a fucking ray gun and just like, all right, go ahead, Sonny. Like, I said, Purple Heart, Medal of Honor down the road. This kid deserves it for everything. And they end up getting everybody safely back up to above ground, and the UFO tries to take off, and there's a big explosion, and we wake up back in bed. That it was all a nightmare, and that David was just dreaming about all this, and no wonder why he was so involved with the whole investigation, and basically being like one of the head of military and everything for all this, because it was all a kid's dream. So it makes sense. So that's why he didn't get to keep that ray gun either. And he ends up going back into his parents' room, and they just said that, it's just a nightmare, go back to bed. David goes back into his bed, and he looks out the window, and we see that beautiful special effects hologram UFO crashing into the sand pit again outside his house. And that's how the movie ends. Yeah, this was a short one, as there wasn't much to talk about with it, but it was just a really fun watch. So if anyone hasn't seen Invaders from Mars 1953, and you feel like checking out an old ridiculous movie that is very entertaining at the same time, absolutely check it out. I haven't seen the remake, but I'm sure I've seen the remake, and that's, like I said at the beginning, why this sounded so familiar to me. But that all those shots of the sand pit with the fence and everything, awesome shots. Like my favorite shots that keep reoccurring throughout this whole movie. Really cool. I'll check out the remake eventually, just to see if anything like more so triggers my memory of this whole concept and idea and stuff. But yeah, fun flick, and got some slashers coming up real soon. So see you guys soon.